Hello, for any of the early birds, we will begin the RowOn conference in 5 minutes. Welcome if you're already online. We will start the 2020 RowOn Virtual Coaches Conference in 3 minutes. In 2 minutes, we will start the 2020 RowOn Virtual Coaches Conference. Welcome, everybody. One minute to the start of the 2020 RowOn Coaches Conference. It is now 7 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2020 RowOn Virtual Coaches Conference, session number 4, entitled Canadian Rowing Model Technique, a Template for Individual Performance. I am your moderator, El Morrow from AMP Rowing, and I'd like to make special thanks to our co-organizers of Row Ontario and recognize the support we have received from Rowing Canada, and the Coaches Association of Ontario. It is important to acknowledge the lands we are on. As we come together for this conference, geographically dispersed, but brought together virtually, let's take a few minutes to reflect on the meaning of places, and in doing, recognize the territories of the different Indigenous peoples of where we live and where we are participating in this conference today. These lands are home to diverse populations of Indigenous and other peoples. We acknowledge and respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future, and our ongoing relationship with Indigenous and other peoples within our communities. The next introductory comments are to review, as you can see on your screen, housekeeping items. All of you are muted and cameras are disabled. Slides are available in OneDrive. Use the chat feature or email Andrea at rowontario.ca with urgent technical issues. Questions are definitely encouraged. Use the Q&A feature to ask questions, and we will try to get to all your questions at the end of the workshop. I do hope you have really enjoyed the conference so far, and for you who have been participating in the World Rowing Conference, I also hope you've enjoyed that. The webinar will be recorded and made available after the conference. Finally, we are extremely fortunate to have two outstanding presenters with us, Michelle Darville and Dr. Volker Nolte. Michelle is presently our Senior A national team coach at our Olympic Women's 4 and 8. Both boats have already qualified for the Olympics, and the latest reports preparation is going extremely well. Michelle is a rower who is a 3-time world champion and an Olympian. She has coached very successfully at all levels of rowing. Volker is a professor emeritus at Western University in London, Ontario. He has not only had success as an athlete at all levels, but also has been an outstanding rowing coach, having great successes with university teams at Western University and with the national team. He is widely recognized as a world leader in the field of rowing biomechanics. Welcome to Michelle and Volker.
Thank you, Al. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope everyone else is staying safe at home and able to get out on the water if their club allows.
Yeah, and hi, and thank you from my side too. Thanks to Al for the nice introduction, and then also thanks for Row Ontario organizing this meeting here. And Michelle and I, we would like to present the new version of the Canadian rowing model technique to you, and alert to the usage of this model, not only in clubs or universities, but also on the national team. This is what we have planned here, Michelle and I together. We would like to update you and tell you also why it was updated, give you a little bit of a background on this, and then alert to a few areas that are new in this updated model. Because as you know, we had this Canadian rowing model technique since many years actually. And Rowing Canada tries to streamline their ideas about coach education and the idea about a rowing model technique since quite some time. But it was time to get some updates, and we will give you some ideas about this. And then we will talk about how it will continue with this model from now on. Then Michelle will talk about the application of this new model, or actually probably any model that Rowing Canada had over the last years on the national team, give some very exciting update on her work with the team and also the focus with their rowing technique. And we will end together with a transition of this rowing model onto club and masters rowers who obviously should also use this Canadian rowing model technique, because it's on the one hand, it will create some kind of ideal perception for athletes and coaches. And this gives a course of action for coaches to teach the technique. We'll talk about this. And then we will, in the end, discuss a few examples. Here we go. This model is, as I said, is quite some years old. I think the last update was something like 7 years ago, and it needed some clarifications. And this was actually a very neat story that I like to tell here, and so you get also to know the people who are behind this update. It was actually Maxim Kepsky, the TID coach from Vancouver, and Mike Purser, who sat together after the last year's Rowing Canada coaching conference in Ottawa, and talked about their ideas about rowing technique, and came about that this reference material for the NCCP needed some updates. And then speaking with Colleen Miller, who agreed that we have to do this, Maxime actually proposed a committee to build with myself, and then Mike Pierce, the head coach from UBC rowing. And we were actually meeting about 10 weeks in winter, spring of this year, obviously virtually, and worked on the material and identified the areas that needed to update it or a little bit more edited and such things. And this committee presented their work, an updated document, to the Coach Education Committee, to Colleen Miller. And Colleen then had some further experts around the country look over and make final additions. And it will be used, this document, actually quite widely. It will be the basis for all coach education courses, from the Learn to Row to the Rowing Canada Performance Coach courses. And therefore it will give a continuous idea about the rowing technique that in Canada should be used. I would like to point out, of course, that association like Rowing Canada needs such documents because they want to use it in coach education, so that the coach education, if it's done in Newfoundland and Labrador, it should be the same as it would be in BC. And then, of course, rowers that move in the country, either from a club to university or from a university to the national team, should have an idea how to perform rowing in a technical point very well. And so therefore, it's very important to have such a document, and also an updated, of course. What we want to do here is, of course, we cannot go through the whole document. The document is available to you. As far as I know, it is part of the conference material that you can access, but it is also will from now on in used in all NCCP courses within Rowing Canada. So we cannot go step by step through this. This would take quite too long. We chose to present 3 areas that seemed to us quite interesting. The one would be some definitions of the positions and phases of the stroke, things that we should use, that this will be clarified, that everyone use the same language. So if you would talk to someone virtually or by phone or however, that you know exactly what the other person is talking about. And then we will talk about some 2 areas that often need some extra explanations. The one is the sequence of joint movements coming out of the recovery. And the last example would be this notion that we actually have to pull on the foot stretcher during the recovery. Here we go. These are the overview of the definitions of the rowing stroke. And let me see. Can you see my mouse, Michelle? Can you not? Can you see my mouse?
I can see your mouse.
Excellent. We would like to look from this as a, oops, this was a little bit too fast. You see this whole stroke starting, so to speak. I mean, in this case, we looked in from Where's my mouse again? There she is. We look from the left, and we call it the full reach position. This is where the hand's body is furthest in the stern. And then we would have the drive, obviously, going through the release and finish and come to the recovery phase. We colored the drive phase here green. You can see this on the symbolized hand curve here. And then blue would be the recovery. I think everything of these things are quite familiar to everyone. Nothing really new there. I would like to point out maybe one thing that's new. We had a long discussion in our little committee about how to call this position where the hands are actually in the furthest position towards the stern. And in the past, the term that was used was obviously catch. But then catch has so many interpretations. It is used as the position. It's used as the movement of the blade in the water. It's used to explain how to get pressure on the blade, and. So we had a long discussion about it and believe that actually the terminology full reach is a much clearer pronunciation for the position that we want to call this. So the full catch position is the one moment in time where the person is in the furthest position, hands are furthest to the stern. And at this point, of course, the blade is still out of the water. And the next step would be then, of course, from this full reach position, we get the blade in the water through the entry. This is a movement. That's a movement. It's very complex, very very complex because it's not only a vertical, horizontal movement, but also the power and the force is applied at this point. And then we have the drive in the middle, and then this goes to the release. The release is again the phase from when the blade starts rising out of the water until the finish position, and then the recovery. So we have 4 phases: entry, drive, release, and recovery. And we have 2 positions, the full reach and the finish position. So, and the next one was we wanted to look at the sequence of the body parts coming out of the recovery. And this is again was an area that causes quite a number of discussions, and was actually Mike Purser who made a very clear statement by bringing some video and some footage onto the table. And we would like now to discuss quickly how the arms, upper body, and legs move out of the finish position. Once again, finish position is where the legs, arms, hands are furthest to the bow, and how they get out towards the next full reach position. So we have here Carling Seaman during training, stroke rate something around 19-20 strokes per minute. And I would like to alert again, if you watch my mouse, this is the finish position, the furthest position with the hands to the bow. And the first movement, of course, comes from the arms. The arms are getting stretched quite extensively, but at the same time, you see already the upper body swings forward too, and the knees start to break. And then, of course, when the hands are over the knees, the arms are almost completely stretched, upper body is already perpendicular to the boat, and the knees are coming up quite dramatically. This was, once again, this is a contentious issue, and people still believe you could do this in a complete sequence, hands away, then upper body and legs, but it is impossible. And if you look then in race pace, this is obviously the last Olympic champion in the women's single. Again, from the finish position, hands away, over the knees, and you see immediately the hands are coming away, immediately the upper body moves, immediately the knee moves, and of course, a further movement when the hands are perpendicular. Now, there is a certain sequence, arms, upper body, legs, but it is more overlapping sequence where there is an intensity difference. The arms are moving a little bit more. The upper body moves a little bit less than the arms, but a little bit more than the legs, and then the legs move very little. So they think, oh, this is only women do this. Well, not quite. If you look here, a sequence of the silver medalists of the Olympic Games, Martin from Demir Martin from Croatia. Again, finish position, hands away, knees are coming up, upper body gets already lifted up. And then, of course, perpendicular position, knees are quite a bit up, upper body is perpendicular. Now, these are obviously national team people. Now we have another quite successful masters rower during training, does exactly the same. And again, this is not, let's say, a technical slouch, this rower. It's Brian Peaker, former Olympic silver medalist, now, of course, past his prime time, now rowing at the Masters. Again, finish position, knees are stretched, hands are close to the body. First, the arms are going away, but at the same time, the upper body comes forward, legs are getting up a little bit, and when the hands are perpendicular to the oars are perpendicular to the boat, the knees are quite a bit up, upper body is almost perpendicular. So there is a sequence, but all joints work together, however, in a little bit of a different intensity. The second part, there's a technical part, is this pulling on the foot stretcher. There is often thought that this is a negative effect on the boat when the people pull on the foot stretcher. And there's quite a bit of discussion about this. And again, we discussed this in our committee and made it clear based on some biomechanical data that we have. Number one is in the finish position, the center of mass of the rower is obviously furthest to the bow and eventually has to move towards the stern, right? In order to do this, in order to move any center of mass, any mass, you need force. And this force has to be applied on the boat. And the only way to do this is actually on the foot stretcher. You look here at biomechanical data, the blue curve is obviously the foot stretcher force, right? And we see the boat velocity and the boat acceleration, what we can now analyze a little bit more into detail. So we see this was the finish position, right? And we see that the force, the foot stretcher force goes into negative. Negative means into pulling on the foot stretcher. And as I said, there is no other way, according to Newton, any movement of a mass needs a force. This force comes only from the foot stretcher. The foot stretcher is the only part from which this force can apply to. There is no other way. You cannot apply a negative pulling force on the handles. If you try to do this, you would obviously pull the handles out of the oarlock and no force can be applied because it's there is no resistance in the oarlock, right? And there is no way to do it on the sea. The sea there can only apply vertical forces. So the only way a rower can actually go from the finish position towards the middle of the recovery is by pulling on the foot stretcher. And this is obviously, we can see on the acceleration also on the boat, because the rower pulls obviously on the foot stretcher. This means the boat gets actually accelerated in this way too. Okay, up to Michelle.
Thanks, thanks, Volker. Volker and I had some discussions about the technical model, which you can find on the Rowing Canada website. It's under coaching resources. So if you're looking for the model, and just have a look through there. Thank you to Colleen for putting that together. With the national team, we do follow the biomechanical principles, and many of the sessions that we do, we focus on how to move the boat. So we look at how the athlete is moving within the boat, how the boat is moving. There's other things that we look at is how strong they are. We work in the gym with our S&C trainer, Matt Davey. Trish McBride is our physiotherapist, and we look at working with her to increase our mobility so that the athletes are able to get in positions that put them in strong positions and are able to go through the mechanics of the stroke with being preparing the body, but also being able to relax when they need to relax, and then being able to apply the force when they need to. Next slide. So our goal is to move the boat as fast as we can. So we're looking at using the biomechanical principles as mentioned. So we look at directing technique sessions towards maximizing propulsion and minimizing velocity fluctuations. So maximizing propulsion is involving how much pressure you can put on the foot stretcher, how connected you are to the blade through the body, through the handle, shoulders, and minimizing velocity fluctuations, as Volker mentioned, withdrawing the boat, trying to minimize any mass like movements, handle movement or body movement going into the stern to impede the boat moving out. Next slide. So with the team, we're looking at areas of opportunity, and the big three for me were drive phase, looking at how they connected. The recovery phase, which is the drawing the feet, was a big one, and how they get into the proper position together. And then even some blade work that we need to be looking at daily. We're not sure how the conditions will be in Japan. If it's quite windy and wavy, we need to have proper blade work and be able to handle that. So what we do know is some parameters that have been set out by our biomechanist, Connie Draper. And we do know that on an international level that a proper blade length, at least for women, is about 90 degrees. So we look at an entry, or we call it the catch angle, which is about 58 degrees, and a finish angle of about 32. And in sculling, you see about 110 degrees, and entry of 66, and a finish of 44. So we know that that's the gold medal standard, or the standard with some variation, obviously. Next slide. So what we look for when I do an analysis of a crew, I look at how they sit in the boat. So I look for body positions, slightly relaxed neutral spine. I'm not looking for an overly stiff spine or a curved spine. It's relaxed, the proper lumbo-pelvic positioning, which I think is very, very crucial for how you're sitting on the seat and how you're moving within the boat. Engaged core, relaxed shoulders. So all this we work on, as mentioned, with our physiotherapist, and she's been quite successful in helping us with the hip mobility and enabling the athletes to sit on the seats properly. So we look for the ideal posture, which will support also the muscle recruitment. So if you're slumped over, it's very hard to engage your legs properly. We look for direct and clean entries. We look for blade seat timing. Next slide. So Volker can explain a bit better than I can on the biomechanics of this, but we do see that the boat is at the slowest speed just after the blade enters. So we look for the timing of the blade and how the pressure is applied to the foot plate at that point. And that's the beauty and also the frustration of rowing, is that it's, the timing of the contrast, or the contrast in the sport with relaxation and, contraction is just, it comes down to the timing, and this is extremely difficult, especially with the conditions changing and rowing with different people. That the timing is everything in rowing. So We look for a quick application of power, but it's not like a really forceful application. It has to be in time with the boat speed and how you're picking up the boat. So we see the blade enter the water, and then gradually as the boat starts to move, then we see more force applied to the foot stretcher. We want to make sure that they're at full reach when they're entering the blade. We look at keeping the core engaged at both ends of the stroke. So keeping the core engaged into the catch, and then making sure that it's engaged as they come out of the entry. Sorry, Volker.
Full reach.
Full reach, yes. Thank you. I have to get used to saying entry and full reach as opposed to catch. So
yeah, I mean, once again, the catch is obviously, as you explained, you have to clearly say that what you are talking about, this quickness of the movement, is of course the entry, right? This is the movement. Anyways, sorry for this.
Next slide. No, it's good. So when we're looking at the drive phase, some of the considerations we look at is the timing working together. So making sure that they're approaching the foot stretcher together, the drive time and the recovery time. So that's in sync with how they move up the slide. The rigging, sometimes there are some individualizations for rigging to enable people to have a longer reach. So if you have a short person, for example, you might want to span them in and span their inboard in so that they can get around the pin a bit more. And then we look constantly at improving flexibility. There's quite a few, and we know with some of the younger athletes and some of the older masters athletes that flexibility impedes how we can compress or how we can get into a position that's help support the drive. On to drills, next slide. So some of my favorites I've just listed here is Russian catch drill, a weighted stroke, which is backing down the boat and just being in time as you're picking up the load, it just slows the boat down and enables you to feel what's happening on the blade. Outside arm on the square, it also helps with keeping the handle light. And then we also do some wide grip in sculling, also enabling you to feel what's happening on the end of the blade. Next slide. So here's a couple of exercises that were provided by our physiotherapist. On the right is the hip flexor stretch, and on the left is the pigeon pose. Give them a go. They'll be on the slides that you have access to. So I'd like to hear how they work for you. Next slide. Finish and recovery. On the recovery phase, we're looking for firm lower back. So again, it's a comfortable position. It's not really tight. Again, the proper lumbo-pelvic positioning is key for getting off the backstops. We don't want to see the pelvic girdle rotated down. And you see this in some boats where the bow ball actually really dips down, and especially in the hard strokes off the start. If the boat's going up and down, they've obviously put a lot of pressure on the seat moving downwards. So the key here is making sure that you're still pressing on the foot stretcher, and then there's a slight upward pressure in the glutes, and keeping the core engaged there as well. Looking for proper handle height. So if you have done the drive properly, you should be able to pull into the proper handle height. We want to make sure again that there's pressure on the feet and the shoulders are somewhat relaxed. So again, here we want to make sure that the timing is in sync, because if you see two different times, it also flip-flops the boat back and forth. And the timing sequencing out of the bow is also critical. If you think about two different, your handle also has weight into it. And if you're moving at different timing, it does disrupt the speed of the boat. Next slide. So recovery phase, we're looking at the boat is still increasing speed and we're looking at drawing the feet to help keep propelling the boat forward. We want to make sure, as Volker said, that the handle and the body start to move together. The less of different mass movements, the less disruption to the boat. So it's just trying to sync that up and really feeling what's going on in the boat, and even listening. Some boats you can really hear the water moving under the boat. We look at setting the body with good posture. So again, the handle comes over to half slide, and then making sure that you've set the body with a good strong core, and then you keep the body still moving into the full reach. So at this point, you're ready to load up. You want to minimize the up and down motion of the handle. It's just a very light, straightforward drop into the entry, and then we keep the shoulders relaxed and the handle just lifts and unweights to allow the blade to just drop in. Next. So again, here we want to look at different body types. We want to look at perhaps rigging as well, if you have a long person or a shorter person, or if long legs or short legs. These are things we can look at when considering rigging and to try to match up the finish position. Conditions, depending on, laid back is a style, bit of a style. As long as you have pressure on the feet, you want to make sure that you're able to keep the blade buried in pressure on the feet. We don't want to see people, lying down in the boat and the blade's out of the water, and then you have to use energy to actually get back up and over to get back into the catch position, or sorry, the forward entry position. And we want to look at the speed of the boat as well here, because some boats, bigger boats, or even some of the sculling boats, we see different styles in the recovery. Some of the probably the Eastern countries, or we've seen some of the German men's quads where they actually sit very upright, and the handle cuts off quite early in front of the body. So, the bigger the boat or the faster the boat, you might want to consider just being a little quicker around the back end and not hanging out there. And as you mentioned before, Volker, separating the handle too much away from the body, because it's, again, different masses moving at different times. Next. So here we go. This is a good shot of actual crew, where you can see there's a lot of whitewash off the blades. It's very untidy, even the boat is tilted over. So we want to make sure that blade is in the drive is at the correct height, so that we are finishing off the stroke properly. We're getting good propulsion off the blade. We want to off the water during the recovery. If you come out too early, you're also pushing water upwards, so it's not in the proper direction. We want to make sure that the blade is entering and exiting the water cleanly. So not too much backsplash. We want to get a little bit of V-splash, and then we want to make sure that it's coming out very nice and clean, not to slow down the speed of the boat. In pairs or crew boats, we want to make sure that the blades are also coming out at the same time and entering at the same time. Drills, really good one for the women has been the feed out drill. So that enables feeling the recovery, the draw up the slide. So you have to make sure that you're not going back too far off the seat at the back end, and it helps you with the timing coming back, getting the body back into position, into the front full reach position. Early extraction is another one, taking the blade out. What I tell the women is try to pop the blade out about 5 centimeters in front of where you normally would. Try to pop it out cleanly so that it just comes out in one motion. And then we look at a variety of pause drills. Next slide.
Yeah, Michelle, I think what you should also mention, the pictures here from the side view of the women's pair there is actually our Olympia qualified women's pair who won world championship medals in the last several years. So
I'm going to
no,
correct you, Volker. Those are not Hillary and Kaylee. So
from the site, not Hillary and Kaylee?
No.
Okay. Then I thought because we have in this boat, we have two women with of different body type, where you would have to actually apply exactly what you were going to say. Yeah, now coming to the application of this rowing technique model to club rowers, masters rowers, university rowers. And I would like to actually point out that we have in clubs actually different levels of training and competitiveness with the rowers and the club members. Well, we have on the one side competitive athletes, and then it goes towards recreation and leisure rowing, or learn to row rowing. And of course, every one of these groups has a little bit of a different goal, right? I mean, competition, obviously, the competitive rowers, they want to be very strong, high efficiency, but on the other hand, also want to maintain their health. Health and fitness rowers are more interested in comfort. They want to be able to row long distances, or for example, on the ocean and so on. And then of course, they want to improve their health. They want to stay healthy. And recreational rowers, most of them, they want to have fun, most and also maintain their health. And then for the learn to rowers, we have obviously to provide the learning environment, and then of course a safe environment. I only want to make sure that it is clear that this technique model that we developed is actually fitting all of these athletes and can be applied to all of them. It is not only competitive athletes who are looking into this, right? So what is this model actually providing us? Number one is it should help us to create an ideal perception. That's very, very important. It's actually the first step. Without the perception, no one can actually do a certain movement or change of movement. So the model should create a perception with the athlete or the coach that said, this is what I want to do. Now, this is of course clear if someone reads this model paper, they will not 100% exactly to the whatever tenth of a degree being able to do exactly the same like the other athlete or coach would do, which is fine. There is, as Michelle actually pointed out, depending on the body size, depending on the boat speed, and depending on the need for efficiency or more for comfort, obviously this perception has to be a little bit applied to the specific situation. Then, of course, it's important for the coach or the athlete to identify what is now the next thing to do, right? And what is not to do. That's actually the tricky part. From the ideal perception to what they actually do, they need to see what is the most important to change. And in the picture that Michelle showed, of course, this one a women's pair that we saw from above, they were clearly had to work on their finish and their release in order to get faster, get more efficient. And then, of course, we also need to know what is correct and what is not correct in terms of comparing to the ideal. And this is, of course, some people have different backgrounds. If you use the model, you actually are on the newest idea in terms of what science can provide. And so you are very clear on the safe side. And then what is possible or not. Some athletes are, for example, not able to, for example, balance a boat completely or getting the plate completely out of the water because they are not there in their learning development yet. So we have to make very clear that we only ask athletes to do what's possible for them, right? And then, of course, we need to take some actions to have the best effect on the goal. Of course, competitive rowers is speed. For other people, it's more comfort. And then, of course, it has to be sustainable. This means athletes have to be able to do this year in, year out without injuries. And what is safe and what's not safe, we cannot ask athletes to do something that's not really safe. for example, a huge lean back or such things, has obviously also problems with the back. And then the very important point is then, and again, Michelle gave some ideas how to do this, is how to convey the feedback to the athletes. You can do this by drills, you can do this by video, you can do this by explaining, you can do this by trying to help with other athletes as an example, and so on. And then, of course, we have some typical examples. So we need to do an analysis, then choose the most important things that we want to change, and then have to say the proper things. That's the path to go for coaches. Here is club rowers from some collection over the years. I found some typical things that you see as a coach with club rowers. Here in this case, of course, the rower here gets the blade way too deep in the water, right? And this would be very difficult to maintain the speed in the water, as well as getting the blade out properly. Another one is if athletes are trying to get too early in the water, you know, trying to enter the blade in the water while they are still going towards the catch. This is obviously not possible, and then we have this huge backsplash here. You see another thing that's very often people try to row too long. If you do this, one is Michelle alerted to, the bow gets obviously loaded. It takes way more effort to get out of the bow. It's actually also not very healthy for your back. And the last thing that I would like to mention, from this position, you never have a clean finish because the blades never get cleanly out of the water. The other one would be obviously also what beginners do quite frequently is lunging into the catch, right? The hands are going down, blade is going way up into the catch. So these are the things that we see. And this, of course, is a rigging problem, right? This rower has her foot stretcher too far set into the bow. Between the hand and the body is way too much space. And this athlete will also have problems to finish cleanly, right? And then we had actually already interesting question sent us already the afternoon from Sudbury. We got these questions about how is this technique applying to the ergometer, right? And the one very simple thing is do exactly the same thing you do in the boat. Here is a nice picture of a young rower who saw the national team a few years ago rowing when people tried to pull the handle to their neck, and obviously he tried to be even better than the national team, and he developed his own little technique. Of course, it's not what we want to see. We want to see, for example, a finish position that is shown here, obviously from one of our national team men's athletes who I believe currently is in the 4 or tries out for the 4. This is where athletes should pull. And by the way, I can tell you world records on the ergometer are never rowed with a handle to the neck. People are rowing to the proper position as shown here. So beware of any kind of exaggerations here, not overreaching at the catch. This happens sometimes too, especially with young, very flexible, too flexible athletes, so to speak. When the knees are going over the foot stretcher, the shins are getting past the perpendicular, and then of course not pulling up to the neck. Last point that I would like to make is now how to apply this rowing technique to the usage of different equipment. And there is, of course, a little bit of a connection. And I show you here, for example, one idea that is posted at the Concept 2 website. You find this with other oar builders too. We have now a number of blades, and there is, of course, another one here. The comp blade is the newest blade. It's not on this chart yet. We have the first old, what we call big blades, and this is obviously the fat blade. And you can see that, of course, depending on the blade usage for the entry, the old-fashioned big blade has a softer grip on the entry. The fat blade is a little bit of a sharper entry, right? And then in the finish, it's the opposite, right? The older oars give a more heavier load in the finish, and then the fat plates obviously give a little bit less in the finish. So this depends on. So for example, recreational rower, right, or a beginner, it's maybe better to have this rower row with a normal big plate, because it helps them to keep the pressure on the blade, and it would be more difficult to do this with the fat plate. It's one of these things. But then, of course, you need to then see if you are in a competitive mode. Is this obviously from the left to the right, the efficiency increases. The fat plate is the most efficient plate that we have. The big plate is the least efficient, and as you can see, this is where the development is going, right? And of course, the increased comfort is the other way around, right? The fat plate is way more difficult to row, and once again, may or may not be important for a learn to row program. So, Michelle, do you want to talk about this here a little bit? About the long-term athlete development, including Fit Life?
Yeah, I'll just add on that the principle, the biomechanical principles are also for health, and you know, our bodies aren't made for lifting really heavy weights, so it's important that when we're taking the load that we actually are connected, and it's not just, you know, a lot of people that go to fitness clubs, you see them just really pulling on the handle and not understanding that our sport is actually a pushing sport. So the technical model, like as you mentioned, it's for everybody to learn how to row, whether you're going to try out for the Olympic team or rowing for life for pleasure. And you get more pleasure out of it when your body's not sore. So really critical that, you know, it's much more enjoyable. The boat flows much nicer when you have a proper stroke. So understanding limitations, what's possible, you know, as I mentioned, there's different body sizes, and, you know, even athletes needing adaptations, physical abilities. You know, there's lots of programs that offer rowing, whether it's within coastal boats or adaptive rowing. And this is something that we need to look into, is how can we make it available for everybody, whether regarding their ability or their age. And there are ways to change things. It's just a matter of discussing that with the coach or the circumstance.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for your support, Michelle. Al, I see there are a number of questions. Can you help us with this?
Yes, there are many great questions, and I have to admit, feel very fortunate I don't have to answer them. Some of them are quite detailed, but just to list a few, I'll start in the order they came in. Actually, there's up to 15 now, so we may not get through them all. But there was one really interesting question that just came in. What are the biomechanical principles? Because they're referred to often in the workshop, but what are these principles? Maybe you could list a few.
Well, I mean, this is the biomechanical principle is a presentation in itself. This is actually the explanation for the rowing technique, right? So some principles, for example, long stroke, right? Michelle said reduction of change of velocities, limitation of the vertical movement, proper force curve pattern, and sequencing are some of these principles, Al. I think it would take the rest of the time, or not even more, to talk about it. So you maybe want to take this as a question for the next conference.
Very good. I think that's a good enough answer. Question number 2, is rowing with feet out still an appropriate drill?
Michelle, would you like to answer?
Pardon me?
We use it. Yeah, we do.
So you believe it's appropriate, in other words?
Yeah, yes.
Could you just explain why?
Well, I think that you can actually feel the connection through the feet. It prevents people from going too far in the bow and losing connection. Like if if you're not sitting comfortably on the seat or staying connected on the seat and the feet, then you end up flopping over the back. You can actually do it on the erg as well, and you can pull quite hard, or push quite hard on the erg. And if you're staying connected, you should not be able to flip off the back of the erg.
Next question. How do we effectively combine ideas of pulling on the foot stretchers on the recovery and minimizing velocity fluctuations?
Well, this is, again, it's a little bit a longer answer if I would explain it 100%. There's a little bit a tricky one. It is, of course, clear we want to keep the boat velocity as constant as possible without getting too high or too low. On the other hand, boat velocity has to go down because we are losing speed through the resistance of the boat. So what we have to do is we have to not try to pull too hard or move too quickly out of the bow. This would actually increase the velocity of the boat immediately in the beginning and then cause some problems there. On the other hand, we need to increase the velocity of the boat because we are pulling on the foot stretcher because we are moving in the back. So what we want to do, we want to try to have the highest velocity of the boat as late as possible during the recovery. So you have to pull on the foot stretcher. At first, probably a little bit of a kick, but then in a very light and continuous way.
Very good, thank you. Next question. On the drive, are we looking for extension of the thoracic spine?
Well, I mean, it's I think, again, how Michelle said is you want to set the body up that you have a strong position in the full reach position and when you enter the water. The most important part, number one, is that you have to have a proper position. And the second one is not changing. So if you have a proper position, the position should be held. So there has to be a strong core to hold the body together. So you don't want to have a further bend in the thoracic spine. However, people have bends in the thoracic spine, and there are obviously differences in rowers. You can look at videos of world championships or pictures and whatnot. Once again, the major part is to have a strong position, healthy position at the full reach, and then maintain it. This is the most important.
Thank you. Next question. Is it just the core that should be engaged during the drive through the finish, or glutes and quads as well?
Well, it's a sequence of engaging muscles, right? Like you come off of the foot stretchers and the quads are lighting up, and then you bring on the glutes and the hamstrings, and then the core should be engaged throughout the stroke, right through to the finish of the stroke.
Next, does interior posterior balance in the boat matter?
Oh God, what is this? Posterior, posterior. What is this? To the side?
Yeah, I'm not quite clear on that one.
I don't understand.
Like we have a physio on the line here.
Maybe the person who asked the question can explain it a little bit, and then you can get back to it.
If we can get back to it, and we'll spend as much time as everyone's willing to stay on, perhaps that person who's anonymous could rephrase that question. Next one. Can you talk more about the specific pelvic tilt at the catch and good stretches to attain such position? I believe this has partially been covered, but maybe be worthwhile restating your thoughts on this.
Michelle.
Yeah, so just looking at how a person is sitting on the seat, we want to have a very subtle pressure on the front edge of the seat, so that the pelvic girdle should be upright, or even just slightly rocked over. But extreme motion, if you're sitting too far back, it doesn't allow you to get into a comfortable catch Volker and entry position. And it's not a strong position. It doesn't enable you to engage the muscles properly. And if you're bent over too far, again, the pressure is being pushed downwards. And quite what happens is that and I believe you said this at one point, Al, is how you go into the catch, you come out of it. So if you're going in and the pelvic girdle is rocking downwards, the head and the shoulders follow down, and then you're dumping down into the foot stretcher, and then you're coming out of it the same way. So it's just, expending energy in the wrong direction.
There is a question here from Zach Lewis. Not intending to center you out, Zach, but there's a couple of words in here that I don't understand, and maybe you might want to resend that question. PER, TER, BATIOSN. So I think we'll take a pass on that question. Does pulling the boat into yourself and therefore yourself into the boat make you heavier because of the large difference in momentum?
Absolutely not. That is one of these misconceptions. By pulling on the foot stretcher or pushing on the foot stretcher, this is a horizontal force, has no influence on the vertical force. And then, of course, we cannot change the weight of an athlete or the boat of the oars anyways. So the weight is never changing. It is a matter how we are moving a weight or a mass, right? And we would like to try to keep the vertical movement as small as possible. There's not totally possible without, because the knees are coming up and to the rocking of the upper body. Obviously, there's a little bit of an up and down movement of the center of mass. But we try, that's the thing, that's the trick. And again, if you would look at the World Championship video and so on, the top people, how they push off the foot stretcher, they try to maintain a very long horizontal stroke without moving the center of mass up and down. So anyways, the pulling cannot affect the vertical movement.
This is a bit of a longer question. The handle path diagram has the drive, in brackets, green line, beginning at the full reach point. Can we explain, and I believe this person means, can a coach explain this as an up and back path of the hands handle at the same time as the starting of the legs? So can the coach explain this as an up and back path of the hands and handle at the same time as starting the legs?
Is this the entry? We're talking about the entry, right?
Yes.
I mean, this must be, right? This must be. At full reach position, the blades has to be out of the water, because at a full reach position, every point of the boat, the handles, oar locks, the blades, all moving in boat velocity. This is the definition of this full reach position, because there is, for a split moment, so to speak, no movement relative to the boat. If the blade would be in the water at this time, we would have a huge backsplash, because the blade would go in opposite direction of the speed of the boat into the water. So the trick in this entry phase is actually to coordinate these, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 things. The handle has to be moved upwards and horizontal at the same time, while we have to apply force, right? And the force has to be obviously then transferred from the handle to the foot stretcher. And the foot stretcher has, at the same time, you have to put force on the foot stretcher to push the body back in order to move the handle. So this is actually a very complex movement, and it is way too complicated for a beginner or even for a world-class athlete to work on every one of these things together. You have to do one thing at a time, and therefore you would use certain drills, like what Michelle said. With a lower velocity, you would do the Russian the Russian entry drill, right? As an example, right? Or you do this with a half boat rowing in order to get this feeling, and so on. So then you would start with a slow motion and then increase the speed. And then, of course, the pinnacle of everything is if you can do this at high speed for a long time. I hope this answers the question.
No, I think that's very good. Next question, interesting one. How does the idea of accelerating into the full reach versus a slow recovery fit into this model?
I mean, we are getting more and more into biomechanics here, and the deep biomechanics. Obviously, it's interesting to have these coaches who are really trying to understand this completely, and this is fantastic. I would like to point out at first what we had in mind today is that we build upon some crafts like this hand curve or the pictures of this little rowing man or woman there, right? That to build a picture that a coach can then transfer over to his or her athletes. To explain it biomechanically is obviously another thing, and I can try this in short terms. This is another very important thing. Towards the full reach from, I don't know, whatever, middle of the recovery on, the center of mass of the boat and the rower have the highest velocity relative to each other. And this has to be stopped at one point, because again, at full reach, everything has to be at velocity 0 to each other. So from this point of the highest velocity to each other, we have to stop. And this is only possible by pushing on the foot stretcher. Otherwise, there's no way to do this. Again, this is Newton's second law. So it would be actually not good to slow down into the catch to try to get less force on the foot stretcher for several reasons. Number one, at high stroke rate doesn't work at all. Number two, what you want to have actually a preloaded leg muscle in order to jump off the foot stretcher into the entry. So you want to actually reach the full reach position with a certain tension in the muscles. And this goes only by going relatively quickly in there, right? This is the same if you try to do a squat jump. If you go into a 90-degree position and wait for a minute and then jump up, you can reach a certain height. Let's say you jump 10 centimeters high or 20, it doesn't matter. If you really want to jump higher, what you do, you at first go down with a speed, slow down this movement to the 90-degree position. You preload your muscles to get some force already on that you can actually jump off with a higher force. So this is what we want to create. Now, again, this has nothing to do with doing weightlifting and so on. It has to be more like very tippy-toeing on this very quickly, nicely to do this quickly done. But it has to be done with a certain speed. And this is actually what the newer techniques you see in world-class rowing when people are doing this micro pause in the finish, or simply to get into this position where they can go with a little bit higher speed into the catch. Trying the short answer to it's a longer, to explain it 100%, it's much longer.
We're getting some great questions. I'm going to ask one more, but in the meantime, perhaps Andrea Miller from RowOn Ontario could unmute and give us permission to continue. If it's, we're now moving outside the hour guideline, but I'd like to continue with the questions. I think Volker and Michelle are happy to stay on. Andrea, is this okay with you?
Yes, Al, I think if Volker and Michelle are okay to stay for a little while, we can answer a few of these questions. Yeah, I'll have to check.
Volker and Michelle?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, we'll keep going. There's some more great questions. At the finish position, would an initial relaxed posture end in a curved spine?
I think we talked about having a position that it's not totally relaxed. There's a little bit of tension in there, but it's not really a tight position. So there is some spring, like rowing, as Volker just talked about the front end, there's a bit of spring to it. So we need to be pliable, but not like, if you have a relaxed back, then you're not connected through the feet and the seat. So I think it goes hand in hand.
Good. Michelle mentions the bigger, faster boat, i.e. the German quad, the quicker we want to swing out at the finish. Is there ever a time when one might want to spend more time at the finish other than doing a rowing drill?
Well, we do see in some of the steady state sessions that people gather, and it's like probably the easiest way to blend a crew together at the finish. So I've seen that with quite a few of our crews in pairs when they're at 18 or even 20, that there is as Volker mentioned, a micro pause there where it's a gathering point, and then the body and the handle start to move out of bow together.
Here's a bit of a challenging question. I did a bit of a survey of the videos from the 2019 World Championships. I think there were about 5 crews in all the A finals that used Vortex Edge blades, and all the rest either had Smoothie 2 or Croakers. If the Fat 2 and Vortex blades are much more efficient, why aren't they universally used or adopted by the blade makers?
I mean, we are talking about the Rowing Canada role model technique, and then we have to solve all the problems in the world. That's one of the questions, and Al is smiling. I had this discussion with Al many years. Al was trying all kinds of blades too. Number one is, I never said there are a huge efficiency difference. I said there is an efficiency difference. Yes, and there is. So from the big blade to the fat blade, it's more efficient. There are several reasons for it. The major reason is the area of the blade. So the larger the area, the higher efficiency, because the larger blade areas reduce simply the slip, and the slip reduces the efficiency. Why don't people use this? This is simply because people are, number one, cautious. Coaches are very, very cautious bunch of people, right? They know what they like to do, and they have in the boathouse, and they rode with it, and they had success with it, and other people do it. So they do surveys and how many blades are using here and there, and then they use the same thing. So this is one thing. So this is people try to go the safe way, so to speak. The other thing is, as I said, the more I move over to the efficient blade, it becomes actually a little bit more difficult, technically difficult. And this is where people may shy away, or they don't want to take the risk. So that's the answer to that.
I believe this is the person that probably felt they didn't quite get a full answer. I didn't get an answer. I fully understand about feet out rowing. If you do this drill, you won't be able to pull on the foot stretchers in the recovery. I think that just needs a little bit of clarification.
Yeah, so I can answer this question. This is one of my pet peeves too. This coach is actually a smart one because he's understanding the situation very well, and this is good. This coach asked, how can you pull? Well, even if you have the feet out of the shoes, the rowers pull on the foot stretcher. What they simply do, they put actually pressure in the heel and then pull on the heel. That's what they do, and this is what they have to do. So therefore, you can actually, it becomes more and more difficult that you cannot row on high stroke rate with the feet out of the shoes. It's very dangerous, right? For this reason, people cannot pull enough by putting the heel down, right? You can actually make a very simple test if you want, by taking the whole feet out of the boat and have only the foot plate, and then have rowers row, and then you will see they cannot row anymore. So by pulling the feet out of the shoe, the drill is for exactly what Michelle was saying. You wanted to get a feel how far you want to swing over, that you're not falling off of the seat. That's what it is, so that you have a balance with the upper body, the mass of the upper body, and the mass of the legs, that you're not swinging forward. It is not a drill to learn to pull less or more on the foot stretcher. The pulling on the foot stretcher is only depending on how fast you want to get out of the finish, and you have to pull on the foot stretcher.
So we now have a clarification from Zach. Should we be instructing our athletes to pull the foot stretchers with their toes or their heel cups? And I think indirectly Volker has just addressed this, but I'll let you speak to it again, Volker.
I mean, first of all, I would not be worried about it. The athletes do this on their own very well. If you have the feet in there, and we are talking then about if you do this at high stroke rate. If you do stroke rate 16 and don't pull, you can literally do everything if you want. If you want to do this properly on the high stroke rate, you will have to pull with your toes, right? And actually what you do, not only do you have to pull on your toes, you actually have to put a torque on the foot stretcher. So you're pulling with your toes and push the heels actually a little bit down to offset the torque that is created by the mass of the upper body behind the seat. So the pulling comes from the toes. The full foot is for this moment of the return of the blade out of the finish on the foot stretcher. So you have a pull and actually a torque.
Next question, can you please explain the reasoning for drawing the release to the finish as a downward line? How can I explain this to an athlete so that dumping the handle into the lap is not perceived as appropriate?
So the curve that we show there is actually, so to speak, an ideal biomechanical measurement. Number one, if you measure the hand curve, you will find such a curve. Everyone does it, and you have to do it. You have to pull down in order to get the blade out. It's the same explanation with the full reach position to get the blade in. If you want to keep the blade in, if you would continue to drive horizontally to the body, right, and would stop the movement while the hand is on the body, well, at this moment, the blade has the velocity of the boat. And this is actually higher than in the full reach because during the drive, you increase the speed. You would actually get catapulted out of the boat, right? So what you actually have to do, you have to slowly get the blade out while maintaining pressure on the blade. Now, this is the biomechanical explanation, and this is correct. The problem is how you explain it to the athletes. This is what I said. You have to see what is actually happening and then use the proper voice and explanation. Your athlete, if you tell an athlete pull down, well, they pull down the blade and rip the blade out of the water. That's not what it's intended. You have almost to create the perception as if the rower pulls horizontal, right? While getting the blade out of the water. And the rower will do this actually then probably quite well. You should not ask the athlete to pull down as so it's a technique explanation matter. The point is the curve shows you what really happens. So if you see it, you should not be worried about it. But the way you teach is depends on the understanding of the athlete and of course also the speed of the boat.
Two more questions, and then we'll close things off. How can you pull the boat towards yourself and eccentrically load your hamstring?
Eccentrically loads your hamstrings. Well, at first, what happens is, I'm not sure. I try to answer the question so the way I understand it. What happens is you have to pull on the foot stretcher to give the mass of the rower a speed towards the stern. In the middle of the recovery, somewhere in the middle, the body has the maximum velocity relative to the boat. From then on in, you have to slow down this movement because at the full reach position, the rower has velocity 0 relative to the boat. This means in the second part of the recovery, you have to push on the foot stretcher in order to slow down the center of mass. Now, depending on how quick you get the slowdown done, the more force you have to apply. This is what we mean. You increase the speed and try to get the slowdown of the mass to the concentrated on the end of the recovery. So you have actually a relatively high deceleration in the end to create a good stretch in the muscle. And this is how you would get eccentric. So what happens is the knees are still bending while you are contracting the muscles. This means the muscles get pulled away, and this is eccentric. This is how you create some eccentric force in the muscle by slowing down the center of mass towards the full entry.
Wonderful, Volker and Michelle. I did combine a few of the questions together because some of them had common points. So I hope I did capture everyone's questions. They're great questions. I want to conclude this session and remind you about the next session coming up on Saturday, the final of the 4 sessions. And of course, there's more for you who registered in the World Rowing Conference. There's more sessions. I want to encourage you to keep working on your coaching education. I hope you've enjoyed tonight. I want to thank all the organizers, particularly Stephen Ross and Andrea Miller from Row Ontario, Peter Cookson from AMP Rowing, especially our presenters. Outstanding job, Michelle and Volker, and great thank you to the participants. Have a good night.
Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Al. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you, Al.
Good night, everybody.